right, welcome to Implausible Nature, your home for all things Black Templar. On today's video, we've got another interview with another Black Templar tournament winner. This time we have Austin Wingfield with us, who won a recent GT with a very unusual Black Templar list, which we'll get into shortly. Um, so to start us off, first off, you'll notice Bob's not here. Unfortunately, he was having some technical connection issues, and he's unable to join us for this. But we'll carry on, and we'll still have a great time. So, Austin, first, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to, talk with us about your list and let our viewers know. So let's dive in and kind of tell us about this list. It's very, very outside the norm for pretty much every kind of space marine there is. Um, you have basically no shooting in this list whatsoever, which is something that Bob and I are always saying. You got to have at least something, and you've got basically nothing. So tell us, what were your thought process behind this, and sort of how your games played out with that.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And Bob is a cherub for us. He'll be shooting us messages. You guys have been awesome. So I appreciate you bringing me on. And this will be fun to just talk about because it is a weird list. And I take pride in building some weird lists. So we'll jump right into it. The only shooting in this list, and we'll go over it, specifically which units are in the list. But the Terminators in this are an anvil, obviously, but they do pump out shooting for like your anti-Xenos. They shoot 40 bolter shots. I've got some missile racks that you don't count on, but they accidentally do things. Which that's what they do.
It's
I'm
like the
paying,
Stormbolter on a Rhino in the
yeah,
old
I'm
days. It's
like,
like
hey,
it accidentally kills something every now and then.
I'm paying 50 points to maybe, kill the Minears off the king from range or something, right? And the way the list works, those are the last two Terminators, to die if you're doing it correctly. So you should have a decent amount of one unit with range. But the rest of it, people ask you, where are all your guns? I'm like, I have grenades. I, th- I throw grenades in every unit. Um, but the way the list functions really is all about taking the middle and standing behind walls with bags of bricks. And that's kind of how it's built. And that is its strength. Once you get that kind of center ground with your giant units and all your characters, um, you can take it slow and be patient and wait for your opponent to make mistakes so that you can pounce upon them with your close combat. Because Templars really just want to hit you with giant chain swords.
Yep, lots and lots of attacks.
Oh yeah, and they've been a pleasure to kill people with in combat. I really have enjoyed um, getting into people. And that's really the strength of Templars, in my opinion, is two things. I think Devout Push and the way it works now is actually very competitive. It's not maybe as good as it used to be with like piling into combat, but the extra 3-inch move towards the closest objective or the nearest enemy really does make you faster than Blood Angels for a CP, right? One unit can,
Yeah.
you know, move an extra 3 inches in the fight phase. You combo that with resing models that died, from an apothecary and +2 charge auras from chaplains. All of a sudden, we're not that slow. you
No.
know, you can clear the table with, these big units that Templars can have and really take it to your opponent. But I don't know. We can go unit by unit if you'd like and just cover the list, or if you had any other questions.
So, I mean, you mentioned Devout Push. I would actually venture to say that it's better now than it was before. I mean, yes, we lost the be able to pile into combat in sort of a fake pseudo charge move, um, which honestly was kind of broken. It was a really weird mechanic, and I don't think GW really intended it to work like that. Obviously, they basically kept the entire thing intact except for that. So my thing with it is the reason why I think it's better now is we can go towards an objective now instead of just the nearest enemy, which means you might be able to be going backwards if you play it right, which can put you back behind obscuring terrain or in cover or something like that. So I think it's definitely easily as powerful as it was
And
before.
I laugh. So I'm not very good at gotcha moments. I tend to tell my opponent what's about to
Yeah.
happen. I can't help myself. But there is that play where I'm behind a wall with two models on an objective, and you put three models on the objective. You know, I will just devout push, and you didn't take the objective. You didn't get your bonus points. I'm going to get a 12 on primary. Like that whole play, it's very gotcha, and it doesn't actually. What it actually does is I just tell them, and they don't come, and I score a 12 anyway. And like,
Right.
right, there is no gotcha. I'm just like,
And then it saves you a CP.
saves me a CP. So, but that's the real power of Devout Push. We've got some new terrain layouts depending on where you're at. Obviously, with player placed, it works like we're discussing. But if there's GW terrain setups where maybe you can't get your unit where you want to, that Devout Push can say, "I can be safe," and then spend a CP in a fight phase to come out in the open. It means I didn't get shot off the table. I stood by, and I still score my points. I think it's a huge deal. And you also combo it with Black Templars are a sneaky OPSEC army. Like when someone looks at a Black Templar army, they don't necessarily think OPSEC Necrons or, you know, whichever, I forget which clan is OPSEC for orcs. But there's some OPSEC armies out there that knights, obviously, they look at it and they see the OPSEC. They don't necessarily look at a Templar army and think all of this is OPSEC, or they have a strat to have, these core
A
units
key
become
unit,
OPSEC.
yeah. I think the
That
strength
comes
of
into play.
conviction is an amazing strat, and the timing on it is perfect because it allows us to use it, and then now we can score primaries after we use it, which is huge.
Huge, man. It really is. And then those are the two, right? That I think from a competitive standpoint, if you combo the OBSEC abilities with the Devout Push, you can really do some really cool mission things, let alone the obvious getting to people and charging them. But those two combos keep Templars ahead of the game for other Space Marines in the primary game, right? So, like, if you look at all my scores from the last several tournaments, I mean, I'm bullying people on primary. I'm making a Vanguard unit OBSEC and sending them on their merry way after devout pushing to slaughter someone, but then they steal objectives, right? They're dropping banners. They're doing these things that other Space Marine factions can't do as easily. I think.
Yeah. So now this tournament was post Nephilim. Is that correct?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit, how that affected your gameplay. How was it playing with less CP than previous? And did you really feel that drop in the initial CP?
So it's a huge, and luckily all of our opponents are feeling it as well, right? So you do feel it in the early game, but your opponent typically is lacking in their command points as well. So my list starts with zero because I love,
Another thing we've said not to do.
dude, I can't help myself. And I could talk about why. If you told me a strat during the game to get, a 3 damage power sword, like I would do it sometimes if it when it matters. So I think it's a huge benefit for armies like Templar.
We have so many good toys.
We have all the cool toys, and they're really all really good.
Yeah.
So I'm actually okay with it. Um, and they are all very strong. So I have like the Fist of Balthus, right? I have the Sword of Judgment. I have the Holy Orb for a sort of fight last when I need it. I spent all the CP, so I do start with zero. But I feel very strong because we're taking the middle turn one, and kind of hanging out, right? So by the time it's go turn, I do have 2 or 3 CP, and then I do have a sneaky Inquisitor who can regen some CP in this list.
That
Um,
helps.
he is a bonus. I tell people I have to keep replacing the Inquisitor model because the Templars kill him after he casts psychic powers. Every After every game, they're like, "Thank you for scoring 12 points on Ritual. You are now dead." And then I have to someone else comes. But yeah, the CP regen from him helps. So typically on go turns, turns 2 and 3, I'm only using a couple a turn, right? We're
Yeah.
maybe devout pushing, like if it's beneficial, maybe becoming obsec. And then the rest of it, I'm pretty old school Marines, right? So I'm not transhuman and all that much. Sometimes I'm +1 to hit on the Terminators, like if I really want to kill something with their chain fists.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't feel that heavy, dependent. And luckily we reroll charges, right? That's like I would actually
That's
use all
huge.
my command points on making these 6 and 7 inch charges, but we just God wills it.
Yep. Yeah, the and a 6 or 7 inch charge, the percentage bump that we get for those is significant. You know, a 9 inch charge is still like basically a 50-50 chance on with a reroll, but 6 or 7, you have a better than average odds of getting it. So that being able to do that for free helps us a lot. Um, and you can advance and re-roll that when you need it too, which is something that I'm personally a fan of. If you need to get somewhere, you can advance and do that. Well, one unit in particular I want to talk about are your two Vanguard squads. This has been a favorite unit of Bob and I for a long time. We even have a meme about it. And at one point Bob was playtesting 30 Vanguard vet in a list. So we've kind of moved away from that a little bit. You've got 20 here. And our loadout for them, we've talked about this in previous videos. Our loadout for them has changed over time. Like when 8th edition started, we were running like a pretty good mix of like hammers, claws, and chainswords for just some cheap bodies. And then now we're pretty much running exclusively claws. Um, and a lot of people, including yourself, have dropped the storm shields to go with a chainsword for presumably a cheaper body with still extra attack. Um, Tell us something that I personally I don't I want the storm shield still on mine, um, but obviously you've had success without them. Tell us what that was like running them without the protection of the storm shields, and how well they survived throughout your games.
Absolutely. So they're the bread and butter of this. There's really 3 units. You pick 2 of them. The two 10-man vanguards are the speed of the list, right? Like we can talk about the Terminators later, and they're very integral to the success of the list. But these are the units that go do things. Like they have to go kill armies, right, and get to different places to do stuff. So the speed in any army is important. So people will always say Templars are slow, but like Vanguard vets aren't slow,
No.
and Templar Vanguard vets with all our tricks are actually above average,
Yeah.
into other Space Marines. But two 10-mans, and the reason I've loaded them out this way is mainly points. We started with double claws, like in testing, and I kill everything with 1 claw.
Yeah.
Typically with the buffs, right? If you're getting chaplain buffs off and you're +1 to wound and you're re-rolling all hits if they're chapter, like you're nuking things as these 10-man vets units. So the chainsword being the cheaper option really does just make sense. If I had points for storm shields, I think I'd be all about it, right? That would make them over the top. If storm shields are ever free, you'll see some new Templar shields go
I
on
don't,
the
I don't,
arm.
I don't think we'll ever be so lucky.
No, I don't think so either. But I want to keep them cheap for what they do. They are trade pieces that hit extremely hard and move faster than expected with Devout Push. And being 10-man units give you a couple options, right? So you can either string them pretty far back to stay in the +2 charge auras from Chappie, the Master of Sanctity, who's giving them those buffs. That helps them make some ridiculous charges that they shouldn't make,
Yeah.
and then also Marines. One of the powers that Marines have is combat squads. So there are some games where I want to split these guys up into 4 or 5 man units, and then they're just the perfect trade pieces. So that's matchup dependent. Hey, do I want to keep them as a 10 man to kill a Night Titan, or custodes, or something super tanky where you need all 10 dudes to really hit something, or are you playing Drakari or Eldar or something, and I want to MSU versus your MSU, and my dudes are superheroes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But keeping them cheap, I love. And then the sergeants are absolute gangsters. The Fist of Balthus and the Sword of Judgment on
They're ridiculous.
on jump pack dudes, right? Like you can put them
Yeah.
on normal guys, but they get the most value, and you're always going to get huge benefits from running them on Vanguard vets, just because they're fast. They do so much work, and that's one of the reasons to play Templars is we have cool toys, right? Like,
Yeah.
so you might as well take them.
Absolutely. You mentioned stringing them back to your chaplains. We've already talked about Devout Push a little bit. That's another great, some of our people may be thinking, yeah, but then you're going to have trouble getting everybody in. But that's another great use of Devout Push is another free pile-in. So essentially you get 6 inches of pile-in movement after charging, which is probably going to get them all in anyway.
If you can plan it out mentally, if you really need the distance and you can see on average what you're going to roll, but like then maybe the play is to like get the chaplain into something closer to, right? Like the termies are going, maybe the chaplain charges to get closer. That way you have the 6 inch pile-in aura still off of him. And then you could do outpush. So like actually we're the fastest Marine in existence.
Yeah. Yeah, because if they're in range of that, then you're getting 2 6-inch pile-ins, which is
Obnoxious.
ridiculous.
It's so
It's
obnoxious.
obnoxious.
You all
It's like suddenly we're completely on the other side of you. How did that happen? Oh, we're Templars. That's how.
It's so good, man, and it's really fun to flip the table like that. And there are turns where that happens, and I do my best, and we can remind our opponents about Devout Push early. And like I'm not gonna got you with like getting objectives, but people pre-measure and they come in, they shoot all the time, and every fight phase I'll pause the game and I look at the state of the game, and we're gonna see sometimes like you think it was a 13-inch charge and it's not, right? It's all of a sudden I'm going to move 3, and with +2 I'm getting you. You're going to catch these hands.
Or claws, as it were.
Definitely catching the claws.
Yeah.
So those Vanguard vets super clutch. I think 20 is probably needed. 30. If I had 30 built like I have, like I would consider running 30. They're that fun. But the Holy Orb on one of the units, mentioned that the Sword of Judgment and the Holy Orb. I think fight last is so important with combat armies. You just can't risk people interrupting and destroying your volume. So having a couple ways to get fight last is needed, and this is not a great one, but it is on a fast moving guy. So like him getting within 6 is more doable than normal. And it comes up every time I use it, where you just can't interrupt his unit, right? He's just going to throw it into somebody and really help. Sometimes it's
And a few
not,
extra mortal wounds doesn't hurt either.
also does not, yeah, for sure. I catch myself in some games like advancing that unit because it's not it's just in the shooting phase, so they won't charge. But even just getting him in position to fight last for maybe the Terminators or something else, it has been pretty clutch in some other armies that have the combat potential that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. So you spent a lot of CP on a lot of toys. One thing that I don't see is Champion of the Feast.
It was the last thing I cut. If I had a CP, I would take it and I would likely give it to the Terminator Sergeant, just so he's a 4 wound Jackaloon with -1 damage. But he does have -1 damage. You combo that with the Feel No Pain Prayer, and he has been fantastic anyway. But I can't have it all, right? So
Right.
that was the last thing, and it hurts me. It hurts me
I
to
can
drop
imagine
that.
it's such a good ability. Like you get so much out of it.
It's silly to not have it, but in playtesting, I was like, do I really need one more wound on that Terminator? No, I've had it on the Sword of Judgment guy before. We had the Fist of.
It's good on so many different models.
It's so good, right?
Yeah.
So the extra +1 to hit and the extra wound and the extra attack, you're like, why?
Especially like Fist of Balthus, you're hitting on 2s
Yes,
with a 3 damage power fist.
it's so
Okay.
good. Um, but I did. I just couldn't afford it with. I needed pretty much everything, right? I felt I needed the Master of Sanctity. Originally, I had Grimaldus in testing, and I got away from him, but I needed the Master. I needed Apothecary just with how the list functions.
Yeah.
You get such value from an Apothecary. What I probably would do, I just couldn't help myself. I gave the Teeth of Terra to an Apothecary because it's cool, but like I probably don't need that,
Yeah.
and I could do Champion, and that probably gets a couple more uses than, but I couldn't help myself. I'm like, I'm making superheroes.
Right.
Right.
This
Yeah,
Apothecary
exactly.
has to be a superhero.
So, tell me a little bit about how you decided which vow you were going to taking. Was it mainly in your list building, or was it more opponent dependent, or some combination of both?
Always opponent dependent for me. So there are many cases where you really start the game and say, do I need cover? That's actually how I think about it, right? Do I need cover? Because armor, contempt, and cover is so powerful. So if cover is more beneficial than the baby transhuman and the invul, then I make sure to pick something else, right? If you're like, man, cover doesn't matter. Maybe they have high AP shooting or whatever. Then the baby transhuman on all of my stuff because Vanguard vets and Terminators can't transhuman.
Yeah.
I will pick that, and the invul comes up a lot. So like I'm playing Tau over the weekend, with rail guns and missiles, all day. So I'm just like the cover doesn't necessarily matter. I need invuls and I need you to not wound me on 2s. If I don't do that, if I like cover, I'll do 6s auto wound. Um, the passion, of course, is you have to charge the closest unless they're in engagement. So that's the easiest one to get around for me, because something will just charge the closest thing first if I'm trying to charge something far away. And you can get around that. Like if your vanguards are trying to make a really long charge and there's a stupid cyberwolf standing next to me, you just make sure like Hellbrick goes into the cyberwolf, right? And make sure all those close units are getting, the Terminators are chewing on them or something else, and then you can make your long charges. Um, I like that into like other transhumanish armies like bugs and things like that, where we're rerolling hits all day. Like I got Chapter Master, we've got chaplains, so we can fish for auto wounds if people are transhuman armies like Leviathan or other Marines, and I get value out of that, for sure.
Yeah, and I think uphold is still a good vow into armies like Death Guard and Blood Angels, who are going to wound you on 2s a lot. I've found it very annoying. I have a Death Guard opponent who ironically plays Blood Angels as well, but he's mainly playing his Death Guard right now, and it's funny, like the amount of times that like he's just used to like, okay, so I'm gonna wound you on 2s. I'm like 3s, just
I
correcting him.
I have to remind them every time. I'm like, it's
Yep.
okay. I'll keep reminding you.
Yeah. Don't worry. I won't forget.
We got you. I would say it's probably still 80% of games are that transhuman is going to outweigh the cover.
Yeah.
In my experience, so,
Especially if you're running a lot of firstborn
yeah, for sure.
who don't have transhuman.
I do pick it a lot.
Yeah.
Even now. So
What type of secondaries did you run, and which ones were effective for you?
that's the name of the game, right? Like in order to have success, you have to have a game plan for secondaries in any army you're playing. I went super simple. So Templars, their secondaries in like faction specific got better. So I do like I always consider them, but the list is built to do two things. It's built to stand in the middle of the table and win on primary. So Oath is a no brainer. And people like Oath did get worse, but you still don't want to fall back, and I still want to stand in the middle of the table. And with Devout Push, I mean, I can have multiple options. If you kill a unit in the middle, I can get a unit to the middle with the character. It's very hard to stop Templars from having a unit wholly within 6 if that's what you want. So that's the plan. And then you just hunt characters and monsters to get your bonus points, right? So, like, there's a benefit, even if they only have 4 vehicles. If you kill a vehicle a turn, like, those are the points that you used to get for, you know, not falling back and standing in the middle. So I'm still scoring 10 to 14 points on Oath typically.
Okay.
Or find a couple characters, or you can find those bonus points throughout the game while you're hunting with your Vanguard or doing things like that. So Oath, and then Ritual is the same. Like the Inquisitor knows he's going to get killed after the game, and he's down for the Emperor. He's going to walk right there to the middle with the rest of the guys. And he's going to do a really easy power 3 times during the game, and I'm going to get 12 points. So what I like about Ritual, unless the opponent has a stratagem to deny on a 4-0, which some factions have, then I have to kind of alter off of it, right? If you just have a psyker that denies, I'm down to just roll off with you because I only have to beat you 3 times. So it's not like Interrogate where every time you beat me, I lose 3 points, right? Like off the score.
Yeah.
Ritual is once I do it 3 times, we're capped at 12. So I'm down. Either you don't have a psyker and you can't stop me, or you have a psyker and we're just going to roll off. That tends to be fantastic.
Aside from the fact that it's
It's
heresy.
Templars. Yeah, well,
It's heresy.
you can always role play it. I got my buddy who's painted it up. It's got the really cool special edition Inquisitor. Like the dude he's just praying in the middle of the table, like to the Emperor. He's not casting a psychic power. He's just praying. Forget what.
Well, whatever helps you sleep at night.
I do think they kill him after every game. They're like, we need you to win this game, and then
Right.
you're dead.
You're dead.
But he's very integral. Obviously, there are opponents that disallow you from doing it, so you can always alter to some of the other ones that the Templars have access to if you don't want a warp ritual. But the third one is typically banners or shock tactics, right? Like shock tactics can be gamed by good players. Like if people don't want to come onto objectives, we just have to be okay with that because if we're just trying to win, like I'm going to crush you in primary if you don't, engage us. So you can deny some shock tactics, which I'm not a fan of. But with Devout Push, I find from the center ruins, that we're living in, we can pretty much get to one of the other objectives that you're hiding on a couple times during the game. So you're still scoring 9 to 12 on shock tactics, even if your opponent's trying to be conservative. So that's always a good one. And then the banners is natural, right? Like banners got easier, especially that the banners don't come down immediately. So becoming objective secured or Devout Pushing to get more models onto objectives, now it keeps our banner up, right? Like all of a sudden now the banner that we raise in the middle turn 1 with my incursors or something stays up, and we're actually getting more points early on where that wasn't necessarily the case previously with different GT packs.
Yeah. So tell me about your thoughts on shock tactics versus our version of it, which is the idols.
So both are good. Idols scoring 2 per objective is interesting because you can have a go turn and catch up, right? Which is and that's probably play style dependent. So if that's how you're playing, if you're down to just not get any, and go and get 6 points and catch up, that's just how you have to do it. I think it's a little safer to just do shock tactics and just be down to get 3 a turn, because I don't necessarily want to yeet my whole army across the table. I kind of like having one unit go, take an objective, scare you. You have to deal with it. One unit go, you have to deal with it. That allows our primary to stay up, because if in the go turn, if you send your whole army and you are going to score a bunch of points on that other secondary, if you bounce, you lose, right? Like you're not going to get
Right.
a bunch of points, then they counter you and kill everything. So I think it's a little safer to pick shock tactics, but by no means is it much better. I think they're very comparable. Like if that's how you play, then but I think it is definitely a good tactic to use.
Do you think with both of these that it can kind of encourage a play style of like almost like a sweeping clear where you go and you take it, and then as long as you control enough other objectives, just abandon it entirely and sort of bait them into like, well, you can either get an objective that I might take back and score more points, or just not get an objective.
Yeah, I think that is how you have to play it, right? So as long as you're comboing that shock tactic with denying primary, then they have to take it back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you're taking objectives, imagine a 6 objective mission and you're taking one and they're still scoring 8s every turn. They don't necessarily have to come back and take that objective. They'll just be down to, fortify their 2 and just score their 8s every turn. But on the 5 objective missions, if you're crippling them and they're scoring 4s every turn and you're scoring 12s, like the writing's on the wall. They're going to lose the game regardless of secondaries if they don't score enough primary. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about it seems like your army is very well built to run Bathe Your Blade.
for sure. So Bathe Your Blade, is this the character one?
That's the pick an enemy model, and if he dies, you get 5. If he dies to melee, you get 10. And if the character who challenged him, you get 15 and a CP.
I've played this in testing, and I guess I'm just a coward. I'm like, because I know no one wants to stand behind a building with a Silent King, but I play Necrons, and I will literally do that if you pick the king.
But why would you pick the king? He just like he's so hard to kill.
That's just an example, right, of a big
Yeah.
character who could bully you, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. You definitely can hunt. So like if you're picking it and you get to the character, you're going to score a bunch of points. You're basically in this specific list minimum 10. I'm like I'm not going to shoot you.
Yeah.
So I do like it, and I've considered that one. I've actually I've tested it, and it's actually more fun. Like in testing, if you're playing for fun, I will pick it a lot because you do silly things. Like now I'm
Yeah.
like Helbert's going on the Crusades, right? I'm like he's coming out and he's trying to make these charges into the lines. I'm like if my Terminators kill the screen and these missiles kill something, Helbert could make a 9-inch charge into the character, which is more. That's actually what the game should be like.
So anything that you would change about your list after this tournament and ATC?
Um, man, the game's changing, so I have to consider chaos now. So trying to introduce, and the Inquisitor will help, like needing to deal with Satans, needing to deal with the Don, who is Abaddon, if you don't know. But like anyone, the Don, if anyone that can phase cap, I don't have much guns, so that's something that I would probably have to reconsider if I'm running into Satans and stuff. The psychic powers will help, but it's still just a smite. It's like trying to do
Yeah.
3 wounds in phases is weird. So I'd have to dive in and be like, all right, am I actually trying to like? I don't even know. I have to dive in and see if there's other phases we can interact in, or I just have to be down to try to smite, shoot, charge, do all that type of stuff.
Plink away with a bolt pistol.
Got to do it. I mean, I got grenades. I threw
You get
crack and
grenades.
frag grenades.
Hey, a crack grenade does G3 damage, right? So Yeah, you might get lucky.
But I do really like the Templar list. I am going to stare at it. The tournament, it does feel really solid. So I wasn't upset about it at all over the last several weeks. I've made a lot of changes. My buddy who paints everything is loves and hates me, but I'm like a little tweaking here and there. Um, Stuff like the blade guard in the list, like probably not needed the way I'm running them. They're just another. They end up just being a unit that hangs out with something that's OBSEC on an objective. You know, they're not.
Well, and they're it's a three man, yeah.
They're like the middle unit sometimes. If the incursors
Yeah.
want to be somewhere else, they'll be the guys that are standing in a ruin in the middle.
And that's what I like about the 3-man blade guard units is they're like really annoying to kill because people see 3-man blade guard vet and they're like, I'm not going to dedicate firepower to that. And so they'll just like throw a little bit of this and a little bit of that at it, and it bounces off them. And then finally, eventually, they may be like, "Screw it! I have to throw a whole bunch of stuff at this." And now, meanwhile, they're not shooting your Terminators or your Vanguard vets. So
Sure.
it's a
They
win-win.
actually, now that you mentioned, I played, versus Hail of Doom lists, and that guy, the icon of Hyman, the AP4, like chewing up the other dudes. I had some feel no pains on him, and then it got to him, and he just will refuse to die to Eldar. He's like, you burnt through all your AP4 and 2-ups, and he becomes a real issue. They're cheap. I really like the list. I really don't know if I will change much.
So tell me a little bit about what made you decide to be like, shooting. Who needs that?
So the first iteration, like when we got into Templars, here locally, double Redemptor, was a thing.
Yeah.
People were running
Still is a thing.
Eradicators, things like that. I can't stand the inconsistencies of the Redemptors.
The plasma is really random.
If they were 3 plus D3 shots, I think I'd run 2. Like I think they're really quality, but because they're random, like they do have the potential to let you down, right? Like they can kill stuff. Don't get me
I
wrong.
can't tell you how many times I've rolled a 1 and just been like, well, we're not doing nothing this turn.
We're in a new world too, where early on, like you don't have CP to re-roll shots. Like
no,
I
you don't.
have. There's no. My game plan is very simple. So more consistent. The Terminators came from them. So I'm like, okay, I need something that punches. I need something that shoots. All right, we're losing all of their storm bolters and Gatling guns. I'm like, okay, 40 bolters is
that's a lot of shots.
Actually, a lot of shots with Chapter Master, right? I'm like, if I really, it's a gun. This unit does shoot some bullets. Then I threw in those missiles, and we talked about it earlier. Like they're not. They probably don't do anything, but they do stuff sometimes.
Sometimes they do stuff.
D6 damage. Oops. You're like, I'm going to shoot that tank over there and shoot the bolters of this, and somehow the tank blows up. And you're like, that can't happen if you don't have those missile racks. So I'm kind of, that is my Redemptor, right? And then all of them with Chain Fist is a riot.
Oh yeah, chain fists are hilarious against hard targets like vehicles.
So there's knights around right now.
Bye knights.
Knights, they can't play us if you have this chain fist unit.
Yeah.
It's physically impossible. I'm gonna have a building close to the center for Oath and Ritual. I'm going to hang out and score primary. Anybody that's coming near the board to play the game, we're devouting, we're getting to you, and we are chewing on you with AP5 3 damage chain fist.
Yeah.
And,
that you can spend as CP and get +1 to hit.
Yeah, so hitting on 3s, re-rolling to hit with Chapter. These guys are so stupid. They're so strong against vehicles. I'll tell you a story. I was playing the Tau in the final round at ATC. So 4 hammerheads, and Quentin's fantastic, Art of War buddy, and I know he's really respected. I don't know if he knew who I was, but like people laugh at Templars, and I'm like, I picked you. You're stuck in here with me.
Yeah.
He went my conscience took over. He killed a couple Terminators, and I move in turn one, and I'm going to charge all of his hammerheads because I devout pushed. I'm going to res a guy back. It's like a 7-inch charge to get into long strike, and I'm going to get +2 charge. My conscience kicks in, and I'm like, I forgot to take morale. So of course I roll a 6, and like 3 Terminators run away.
Oh God.
So I only end up having 3 Termies. I swear those 3 Terminators with Chain Fist still killed 3 Hammerheads over the course of the next 2 turns. It just they're
awesome.
so strong into vehicles
Yeah.
that you're kind of always in the game. They are slow, but like with Devout Push and the charge and the res, like that's their whole trick, right? Like
Right.
they hang out until I like stick one model out. So I want you to shoot me so that I'll kill him, maybe lose 2 or 3, just so I can res and devout and get the extra movement. Because all of a sudden they move faster than the Vanguard vets if they res a big 40 mil guy up in front of that unit.
It's the Necron trick.
It is. It's very Necron.
I'm gonna put this warrior here.
I'm going to put
this warrior here. This guy.
very powerful.
I'm more on the objective now.
Yeah, it's very strong.
What do you think about? There's been a lot of points drops with Nephilim. Some surprises that we weren't really expecting, like assault squads, are suddenly 90 points for 5 guys with jump packs and flamers and twin claws and the sergeant. And the gladiator went down 15 points. I think it's a pretty decent buy at 200 points for really 220 for 6 Melta and 4 Las Talons. What do you think about like some of those units that really didn't get much attention before, but now may be worth considering?
100%. I think all the Marine factions should reconsider all those units. I've already seen Blood Angels players dip into the assault squads. I obviously didn't have them ready to go. So I haven't play tested them yet, but all of that is viable, right? Anything that's cheap and, is reasonable in combat is definitely considerable for Templars. But like we said, we do need to find ways to shoot a little better into some of these new matchups. So all of it should be on the table, I think, and we'll really see what happens.
Well, I think that's pretty much all the questions that I have. Anything that you wanted to add to our viewers? Any advice on like how you deployed with this list, or ways to take advantage of terrain?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question that you didn't ask, but you mentioned terrain is huge in any game. So any army you're playing, I believe the game before the game is the terrain placement. So we're lucky enough to be able to devout push, right? That's one of the strengths that we have. So even if somebody puts a building in the center of the board first to push us back, there's still value in us putting some sort of large terrain feature as close as possible, so we can get up in there to threaten the opponent's deployment zone, and we can devout onto the center if we need to for oath, right? Or for if we're not quite wholly within 6, we're just down to sack CP to get oath and be safe. So very important to place something so you can stage your army where when you're devout pushing and when you're coming out of these hidey holes with your Vanguard vets, you can reach out and touch corners of the board that your opponent's trying to hide on, right? If you deploy more defensively and all your buildings are back in your deployment zone, you'll be safer early on, but you won't threaten your opponent's their game plan. They'll be piloting pretty much the whole game, and you'll be responding to them versus you taking the middle, having a launch pad. Like I said at the beginning, we're standing behind walls with bags of bricks. We need to be standing as close as humanly possible to the opponent to put them on a timer. What ends up happening is some players, if they haven't practiced into they actually don't know what to do. And they end up not coming because they don't know how to crack that fortress. So they just lose by turn 3. We're up on primary, and maybe we've sent some units out because of our terrain placement, and the game's kind of over. And then you can just send it, you know,
Yeah.
have fun and clean up, and get a higher differential, or try to end that game sooner than later. But though in terrain, this army is very important to have that center terrain feature. Other than that, it's the incursors are for obvious reasons. We need them to forward deploy in certain missions for CP, but they can be in the weird place and raise banners turn 1. If we pick banners, they can be in the middle and be the oath unit. Like if you set that first piece of terrain, and no one really wants to charge them and then get countercharged. So they're actually a good kind of throwaway unit. So I've really enjoyed them in the list. Other than that, it's everyone deploys in a ball of doom, and they I imagine they carry a giant cross across the desert like Kingdom of Heaven. And
Here we are.
yes, here we are.
So anyway, thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk with us about your experience and give some insight into your definitely unusual list, but it seems like it worked very well for you with your play style. So yeah,
Hey, I appreciate you having me on, and this was a blast. You guys are fantastic. You got cool shirts. You got a cool show. I wish the best for you. Hopefully, I'll win some more with Templar soon. We can.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. We definitely want to. We'll be keeping an eye on your tournaments. Are you going to continue playing Templars, or are you going to switch it up? I know a lot of times we talk to folks and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to switch it up to XYZ next."
They are so cool. So, and if I'm going to send you some pictures, because they look so silly, like they're so good looking. It's very easy for me to like enjoy playing with an army like that when they look as good as they do. So, I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to play Templars again. I may play them at Nova. Honestly, I think they have a.
That would be great.
I think they're.
We need some more representation.
Yeah, it's funny. I was the only Templar player at ATC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. Like we don't get a lot of players playing in some of these tournaments, which leads to like our numbers being very skewed. Where it's like, oh, the win rate's really low because it's either people are just playing that are casual players that aren't really tournament players, or we just don't have enough representation to get an accurate feel of how we're actually doing.
Yeah, and I've put them to the test. I think they're very powerful. They are niche, right? They have some tricks, and they're very powerful. So I will definitely play them again. I am a chaos player, so they gave me a book. I will likely dive into some triple disco nonsense because that seems fun to me too. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm actually excited, like you said, to look into some more units that Marines are got discounted on, like you said, and maybe the Templars will grow into something new.
Awesome, good stuff. Well, thanks again. And we'll hope to see your name at the top of the list here soon again.